Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Well, I was really looking forward to it.
Back in business.
We're toying with the idea of having a COVID fee.
Welcome to Zazu Salon and Academy.
How getting a haircut or grabbing a bite in BC has dramatically changed. Also,
I want to reassure you that we would not be easing these restrictions if we did not feel we could do so safely.
Follow the rules. Dr. Bonnie Henry's firm reminder to businesses opening their doors. And
they inspired all Canadians at a time when we needed it.
worst case scenario turned worst nightmare.
No!
How did a snowbird's flight turn fatal?
This is CBC Vancouver News.
good evening. As 3 more deaths from COVID-19 and just 2 more cases are reported in BC today, our province is now rolling into phase 2 of its restart plan.
Many businesses ordered to close have been given the green light to reopen, but only if they abide by new health and safety regulations.
Okay, so here's a look at what's allowed to reopen under enhanced protocols. Restaurants, cafes, and pubs, medical services like dentistry, physiotherapy, registered massage therapy, and chiropractors, personal services like hair salons and barbers, childcare facilities, in-person counseling, museums, art galleries and libraries, parks, beaches, and recreational facilities, office-based work sites.
Some businesses, like the retail industry that were never ordered to close completely, must follow a new set of guidelines if they want to reopen or stay open. And restaurants opening their doors today have to follow new rules on capacity and spacing of customers. As Jesse Johnston reports, dining out just became a very different experience.
If you remember normal, this is kind of what it looked like. Patios with people on them. And servers actually serving.
It's great to have the buzz of atmosphere of people dining and the clattering of cutlery again.
This restaurant, like most reopening today, is operating at just under 50% capacity to ensure safe physical distancing.
I think it's great that they're open, and we'll just have to hope that we don't get an increase in the virus.
Just down the street, this restaurant patio is as full as it's allowed to be under the province's rules. One of many new safety measures in place, and inside, customers are taking safety precautions of their own.
Well, this, we always carry one of those, hand sanitizer. I was doing the masks. You know, I've realized as long as you're healthy, social distancing, keeping your hands clean, then.
Definitely like washing hands a little bit more often.
Restaurant owners are grateful to be open again, but it remains unclear if they can turn a profit under the current rules.
For the restaurant industry to really succeed and really thrive and be healthy, we need to be able to take advantage of the square footages that we've leased in previous years. So we really do need to get up to that 75%, 100% capacity, but in due time, we have to be patient and we have to make sure everyone's health and safety is of the utmost importance.
Many gyms are in the same boat.
Put your heels down like this, so we'll start like this.
At this fitness center in Port Moody, they're operating at 50% capacity and taking other precautions too.
And we're cleaning like a lot, like more so than before, you know, 15 minutes before and after classes. So things have been adjusted such that I think we've done the best you can possibly do.
Whether it's working out or eating out, many are still too nervous about the coronavirus to come back. But for others,
I've spent quite a bit of time working from home, and so to come back here and even just to see people, even if they're 6 feet away, it's just nice to actually see people again.
Happy to be back and doing something physical and getting my mind off everything that's been going on. And
the opportunity to do something normal again is too much to pass up. Jesse Johnston, CBC News, Vancouver.
And if you're tired of window shopping or buying online, some good news for you.
While they weren't ordered to close in the first place, many retail stores did anyway, but they're now reopening as well.
Dan Burritt is live on Robson Street in downtown Vancouver tonight with more on this. So Dan, what's happening at some of those retail stores?
Well, clearly some people were jonesing for a little retail therapy after months of being cooped up. This is the lineup here to get into Aritzia, I should say. down the street at Zara, another lineup to get in. A lot of these stores, and particularly at Sport Chek down the street, a lineup around the building to get in, 50 people in there max. A lot of these retailers have done this. They're enhancing cleaning and telling people to stay apart. Now, that was part of, as Anita mentioned, the fact that some of these stores, in fact, were not ordered to close. However, when you think about the drop in customers, they've had to lay off staff. They just weren't able to stay open. And a lot of them struggling as well to pay their rent. Now, as we said, a lot of them weren't ordered to close, but thankfully, as you can see, a lot of the customers happy to be back. We spoke to some people shopping along Robson earlier today. Here's what they had to say.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to just have like the chance to go look at something and try it on and just feel better about it.
Yeah, I'm glad that things are easing up and everything is going back to normal.
No, today not busy. Everything is okay.
No lineup, no nothing. I think it's because I got here a little bit earlier.
And yet another thing you also notice, particularly here along Robson Street, for lease signs, for sale signs, businesses that are empty and renters who are trying to either get in or landlords looking to get new tenants. As well, plenty of other stores that just are not open yet. Their signs are still in the windows saying they were tentatively planning to open on March 31st, and they're still waiting. So it's not like this for everybody. Anita, Mike?
Lining up on Robson, Dan Burrett live tonight. Thanks.
Well, and if you were trying to get your hair under control today, you may have been greeted with a long lineup. There were some of those lineups at barber shops and hair salons across the province today. It's been months since salons have been open and people were eager to get a trim, but visits will be a far cry from what they were before the pandemic. For starters, your cut and color will likely come with a COVID fee. Salon operators say new safety guidelines mean higher costs for them and for you. As Balpuri of the CBC Impact Team reports, that'll mean more protocol and less pampering.
Salons are all about new looks, but before they can once again give you one, they have to get one themselves.
So we have 19 chairs here, and we're only going to be going down to 9 chairs.
Physical distancing is one change to keep stylists and clients safe during the COVID pandemic. Expect plexiglass, masks, and gloves. Don't expect magazines, beverages, and perks.
Like, we won't have the scalp massages with our shampoos and all the little extra touches like makeup touch-ups and stuff like that we're not going to be able to do.
And a trip to the salon will likely cost more.
We're toying with the idea of having a possible COVID fee. We're going to have reduced productivity, reduced capacity. So how can we make that up?
Salon operators predict minimum price hikes of 5 to 10%.
It looks like we're at about 60% capacity, so that's a big hit for us as a business. So we want to make sure that we're able to sustain ourselves in being open as well.
Weeks of being closed and readjustments to reopen have led to huge financial losses.
The real challenge for this industry, unlike other provinces, BC doesn't regulate hair and beauty professionals. That means no minimum standards or protocols. And as a result, not everyone is eager to reopen.
One BC stylist petitioned the provincial government to not include her industry in the first phases of its back to work plan, fearing its impact on cases of COVID.
I don't feel safe right now. Could we wait even a couple of weeks to see with non-members like other businesses that don't, that can socially distance? Will there be a spike? How's it going to look?
But salons haven't been ordered to reopen. They've just been given the okay if they choose to under WorkSafe BC rules designed to reduce the risk of transmitting the deadly virus.
It's nerve-wracking. There's a lot of emotions that come along with it because of the way the world is right now. So it's just tackling all those emotions for you and your client.
Clients, it appears, may be desperate to get their hair done. Salons that are reopening are already booked for May and halfway into June.
We look forward to seeing you. Thank you so much for calling.
Balpuri, CBC News, North Vancouver.
All right, to the latest numbers now, and the number of active COVID-19 cases in BC is now at 325. That's the fewest since March 19th, exactly 2 months ago. As we mentioned, 3 more people have died in the past 24 hours, bringing BC's total to 146. The good news, today's 2 new confirmed cases are the fewest since March 6th. BC now slowly approaching 2,500 confirmed cases. There are now 45 people in hospital, 12 of those patients still in intensive care, and we are nearing 2,000 recoveries in the province, with 81% of cases having recovered.
Okay, so with all these new guidelines, who is responsible for making sure customers and companies follow the rules?
Tanya Fletcher is here live with more on this tonight. So Tanya, how will businesses be monitored, and what's the enforcement process?
Yeah, so Mike, WorkSafe BC has been taking the lead on making sure that each sector can tailor these guidelines to their individual needs. And from there, the province will make sure those rules are monitored and enforced. So Dr. Bonnie Henry emphasized these are not regulations, they're guidance standards. So accountability really lies on the business owner to make sure those plans are posted publicly, so there's transparency. Now, BC's environmental health officers are the ones in charge of overseeing safety in the workplace through inspections.
If you have concerns about safety in a business, whether it's a nail salon or a restaurant, then you can complain to your local public health, and they will do an inspections depending on what the risks are, and there's various different levels of inspection. But again, our first line of action is not to find people or shut them down, it's to ensure that they are taking the necessary actions that we need to keep people safe.
But she did say in that same breath, there are mechanisms for health officers to fine or shut down any businesses as a last resort if they're not complying.
Okay, Tanya, many of those guidelines include wearing face masks, but BC hasn't actually ordered mandatory masks in public even as we begin to reopen. Can you talk about why?
Yeah, so Dr. Henry reiterated today there's no scientific evidence that a non-medical mask can, in and of itself, protect you against the virus. We heard again today you should not wear a face mask instead of practicing other more effective measures. But she also says the role of masks has evolved, and at this point we should be prepared to wear them when it's difficult to physically distance. So she gave some specific scenarios where wearing a mask is now a good idea.
Things like using transit, where we might not always be able to keep that physical distance, where we're in a small store where it's difficult to keep that distance from people for the short period of time that we're there, and for places like hair salons where you're going to have be closer to somebody.
But she emphasized again, we should minimize the amount of time we're in that kind of close contact with others. And she also cautioned against becoming complacent if you're wearing a mask, you know, making sure it doesn't give you that false sense of security or make you feel like you're invincible. Mike, Anita?
Thanks, Tanya.
Well, as people across the country mourn the loss of Snowbird's team member, Captain Jen Casey, the Prime Minister addressed the accident today, promising to reach out to those affected by Sunday's deadly crash in Kamloops.
I will, of course, be speaking to the family of Captain Casey and others. There is going to be a proper investigation, and we're going to allow them to do their work before we make assumptions about what might be the outcome of that investigation.
For their part, investigators caution that work will take time, but they do describe Sunday's incident as a worst-case scenario turned worst nightmare, adding Captains Casey and McDougall would only have ejected if they had no other option. Briar Stewart spoke with some of the investigators in Kamloops tonight.
At a growing memorial outside the airport, Canada's Minister of Defence, along with members of the Snowbirds, came to remember and pay tribute to Captain Jen Casey.
Having this display demonstrates to them how much we appreciate what they do for all of us.
Nearby at the crash site, Air Force investigators are focused on the wreckage still strewn across lawns, trying to piece together what led up to this. No! No!
What are you looking for when you see that video?
David McNair is a former investigator with the Transportation Safety Board.
But I listened to hear if I could hear the airplane that was climbing, and if you expect it was climbing, you'd have an engine increase of thrust. Didn't hear that, so I'm wondering if there was some sort of engine problem.
Robert Mitchell is a former commander of the Snowbirds and still flies in air shows. He knew Casey personally.
You know, it's obviously horrific and tragic, and you don't often think of one of the passengers in an airplane and the Snowbirds being hurt like this and are killed.
Mitchell says it was not uncommon for the public affairs officer and a mechanic to ride in the jets in transit. On Sunday, pilot Captain Richard McDougall and Captain Casey were on their way to Vancouver Island. Mitchell says each would have had to pull their own ejection handle, and officials confirmed they both ejected before the crash. As for the safety of the Tudor jets, which were originally manufactured in the 1960s, Mitchell says he has no concerns.
I would go get in that jet today and fly it. I have thousands of hours flying the Tudor jet with the snowbirds and even in pilot training, and I never question the airplane.
Officials say the jets are checked before each takeoff, and every 2 years they're essentially torn apart and rebuilt. But something did go horribly wrong, and it could take a year for the investigation to be complete. Briar Stewart, CBC News, Kamloops.
A BC teen with a rare degenerative disease has finally won his fight to have the province pay for a pricey wonder drug.
But in the time it's taken to get that approval, his parents say his condition has deteriorated. Eric Rankin of our CBC Vancouver Impact team has the exclusive story.
Okay, you ready?
For most of his life, 14-year-old Miles Ambridge has been getting weaker and weaker, robbed of strength by spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA.
Okay, here we go.
He can't walk, his arms are getting weaker, and breathing and swallowing are becoming more difficult. But some of that might be about to change. After a long battle with the province, Miles is about to receive a potentially life-changing drug.
When I heard, I was like, oh my God, finally, it's about time.
It's been a really long fight, so it's really good. Yeah.
Spinraza needs to get to the central nervous system.
The BC Health Ministry will now pay for Spinraza, one of the most expensive drugs in the world. The gene therapy can halt, even reverse the effects of SMA in young people. The problem, it's $118,000 a shot, $700,000 for the first intense year of injections. It's not known if BC, like some jurisdictions, negotiated a cheaper price with the U.S. manufacturer, Biogen. In December, the Health Ministry approved Spinraza's use in children 12 and under. Miles missed the cutoff by 2 years and appealed. But then COVID-19 hit, and he feared he'd be forgotten.
I knew that would get in the way, and it did for a while, and that's just the point where I kind of lost pretty much all hope.
The Health Ministry won't comment on the case, citing patient confidentiality, but says requests for this expensive treatment are reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Miles' parents are thankful, but say he's gotten worse during the 5-month wait.
He was no longer able to play one of his favorite games because his arms had weakened enough where he couldn't react quick enough and whatnot, and that really sucked. That was painful to hear.
Miles' treatment is expected to start soon. His parents have modest hopes.
Be able to tackle on a job and graduate high school and do what every 14-year-old should be doing,
Miles and his family vow they won't give up the fight to push the Health Ministry to help everyone with SMA.
Try to approve Spinraza for as many people as you can.
Eric Rankin, CBC News, Vancouver.
A BC woman who pleaded guilty in the college admission scandal in the U.S. has been fined $250,000. She admitted paying a bribe of $400,000 to get her son into the University of California, Los Angeles as a fake soccer recruit. Xiaoning Xu, a Chinese citizen who lives in Surrey, pleaded guilty in February. Today, she was sentenced remotely by a Boston judge via Zoom. She was arrested in Spain in September, jailed for 5 months, and eventually extradited to the U.S. She will not serve any more jail time. Her son gained admission based on fake information that he was a top soccer player in Canada, even though he didn't play competitive soccer. About 50 wealthy parents have been caught up in the admission scandal.
Time now to check in with meteorologist Brett Soderholm. Brett, you're looking nice and sunny up there.
It has been another beautiful sunny day. This would make 2 in a row. Yesterday, for those that had the day off, Victoria Day was quite lovely. And today, even though it started off a little bit cloudy, the sun definitely has come out all across Vancouver and the Lower Mainland in general. But I know you may be interested in wondering if it's going to be sticking around Sadly, it's going to be hiding in the clouds for the next few days, but I do want to take a look now at our current temperatures, though. This really was one of the dominant stories for today because Vancouver got up to about 19 degrees, just shy of that 20-degree mark, but places into the Fraser Valley like Abbotsford and Hope certainly did make it. I wanted to zoom out, though, and give you a look at what's going on across the country. There is a lot of warm air right now centered across the Central Prairies, so places like Saskatchewan and Manitoba seeing some of the warmest temperatures in the country. In fact, a lot of them pushing very close to about 30 degrees, especially in Manitoba, whereas the east, understandably, is going to be much cooler. When it comes to our forecast, though, back into Vancouver, I want to mention how for the next couple of hours, we're not going to be expecting to see any clouds really of note, just a few small little clouds throughout the evening and overnight period. But tomorrow morning, these clouds are going to be increasing in size, and that's going to make for a mostly cloudy day with a few showers. But as I've been mentioning throughout this month, we are looking at some additional rainfall, and this is going to be good to help bring up our monthly average. And when I come back, I'm going to have the full provincial look at what our forecast is like across BC.
Talk to you soon, Brett. Thanks.
And a reminder, you can watch this newscast live on CBC Gem. The free app is also where you can find other CBC programs.
CBC Vancouver also on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And you can follow the two of us on Instagram and Twitter.
It was set to reopen in 2 days. Well, now the Canada-U.S. border will be closed even longer. All the details on that right after the break.
Thank you for staying with us and watching online during our ad-free live-streamed newscast.
Well, there's been a huge uptick in bike sales in recent weeks, both here in BC and in Toronto.
But Greg Ross is looking into whether it's just a reaction to the pandemic or if biking is here to stay.
We just saw a drastic spike in spring given the conditions that are out there.
Jabir Hassan Ali is a part owner of Giant Cycle on Queen Street. He says business is booming right now.
We're experiencing a large number of consumers that are either new to the world of cycling, that have perhaps cycled in their early days and now returning to it.
But people aren't only buying bikes for recreational purposes. Hassan Ali says many of his customers are turning to them as an alternative to public transportation.
A lot of people are just after commuter bikes right now, planning for returning to work and how they're actually going to get to work.
There are also options for people who are not in the market for a new bike.
We've seen in terms of our stats with bike share, a huge increase.
And because of the increased number of cyclists on the road, City Councillor Joe Cressy says we need to expand the city's infrastructure to support it.
Cities around the world, from New York City to London, England to Bogota, have all implemented huge increases in cycling infrastructure as a public health imperative in the wake of COVID.
But some wonder if the short-term gain from expanding bike infrastructure could lead to long-term pain.
If we rush into things, it's not easy to reverse a decision to close a lane or to take away parking. That infrastructure is permanent.
City Councillor Stephen Holliday says it could cause major problems when people return to work, especially for those commuting from the suburbs.
As more and more people go back to work and choose to drive their vehicle instead of taking the public transit system, we may see extremely acute congestion during rush hour.
Holliday is also concerned about spending money to make those changes when we could be headed for a major recession. But Cressy says we can't put a price tag on issues of public health.
What our medical officer of health at the city, Dr. Eileen Davila, has said very clearly is that we need to expand and accelerate safe distancing on sidewalks and with new bike lanes. That's important because this virus isn't going away.
Cressy says city staff will bring a report to council next week, which will include recommendations to change and potentially accelerate the city's bike plan. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I have to say, a lot of people in my life have gotten on the biking trend, including my husband, every single day.
Oh, so did he have a bike or did he buy?
He had a bike already, but I will say that last summer it sat completely unused and now it's being used every day, so.
Well, then I can relate. I've used to bike a lot. I did the Ride to Conquer Cancer a few times and Cops for Cancer as a guest rider. And then I put my bike away in storage. That was a long time ago. It's coming out of storage.
So it hasn't come out yet.
It's coming out of storage on Wednesday because it has to be serviced. So I got one of those mobile service companies coming by to service the bike and we'll get it back on the road. Gotta get back into biking.
Can't wait to see you bike into the studio, Mike.
Yeah, you probably won't.
We'll be back in a few moments with more news.
Ottawa and Washington have agreed to keep the Canada-U.S. border closed to all non-essential travel until June 21st.
We're adjusting constantly to what is the right measures for Canadians to get that balance right between keeping people safe and restoring a semblance of normality and the economic activity that we all rely on.
The border was slated to reopen to tourists, day trippers, and other recreational travelers May 21st, 2 days from now. But this is the second time the date has been pushed back. For his part, Trudeau says extending the closure by 30 days once again is the right thing to do. The terms of the agreement remain the same. That means those who try to enter the country at irregular entry points will be returned to the United States.
Well, most Canadians have essentially been housebound for the past 10 weeks. Now, as shops and services slowly return, impatience is mingling with apprehension about the risks of getting out there. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer says Ottawa must ensure public safety, but should be urging people to resume life.
I am encouraged by some of the signs that we are reopening, and I think that government should be encouraging that and doing everything we can to facilitate that and make sure that the reopenings are successful by things like ensuring that there's adequate personal protective equipment, that there's support to the provinces as they do this.
The World Health Organization has wrapped up its annual assembly with a unanimous resolution to review the world's COVID-19 response. But the WHO's role in the effort to fight the pandemic is being criticized by its biggest donor, the United States. As Katie Simpson reports, U.S. President Donald Trump's attacks on the organization come while he faces questions about promoting unproven treatments.
The president is threatening to permanently end all American funding to the World Health Organization and revoke the membership of the United States, all because of his concerns about its initial reaction to the coronavirus outbreak. In a 4-page letter the president posted to Twitter at 11 o'clock at night on Monday, he outlined a number of grievances, mainly that the organization didn't do enough to press China for answers in the early stages of the response.
The letter is a very detailed, long letter, but basically they have to clean up their act. They have to do a better job. They have to be much more fair to other countries, including the United States, or we're not going to be involved with them anymore. We'll do it a separate way.
The president's argument was undermined when one of his claims was proven to be factually incorrect. He claimed that the World Health Organization ignored some publications in leading medical journals, including The Lancet. However, The Lancet said it did not make any publications on coronavirus until late January, unlike what the president had said, that those publications were actually happening in December. So The Lancet said that is not true. Donald Trump is also facing additional scrutiny after volunteering publicly that he is taking hydroxychloroquine, an unproven anti-malaria drug that's also used to treat conditions including lupus, as a way to prevent contracting COVID-19. There's no science to back up that this drug has any sort of effect on either fighting the virus or preventing the virus. However, his press secretary defended the decision today.
Any use of hydroxychloroquine has to be in consultation with your doctor. You have to have a prescription. That's the way it must be done. That being said, I talked to the FDA commissioner this morning, Stephen Hahn. He said hydroxychloroquine has been approved for 3 other uses. We have a lot of information about the safety of this drug, though ultimately you make that decision with your doctor.
Doctors and public health experts have been going on cable news networks as well as regular news platforms trying to get the message out that there are some dangerous side effects that come with this drug and that it should not just be taken outside of a controlled setting. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
It's been 1 month since a rampage by a gunman in Nova Scotia left 22 people dead. Now, newly unsealed court documents are offering more insight into those killings. As Elizabeth McMillan reports, a provincial judge agreed to release 40 pages of redacted records after CBC went to court to get access to the information.
Police interviewed people who knew Gabriel Wortman or encountered him on April 18th and 19th.
The picture that's emerging is one of a man who boasted about weapons and was known to be abusive. Some witnesses described the denturist as wealthy and paranoid. One person told police he was a psychopath who'd been severely abused as a child. Several people spoke to RCMP about how Wortman kept plenty of guns and ammunition at his properties in Portapique. They said he had security systems and had recently stockpiled about $800 worth of gasoline. One witness told police they had previously heard the gunman talk about getting rid of bodies and that he stored chemicals under his deck. The documents also offered details about the beginning of the rampage. His common-law spouse told police they'd been FaceTiming with friends before an argument that led to him assaulting her. She said she saw him pour accelerant on the cottage they shared, a warehouse he owned, as well as several vehicles. Shortly after, 2 other people saw a building burning, called 911, and drove up to the Portapique property. There, a man who appeared to be an RCMP officer drove up alongside them and started firing. A man was injured, a second person was not. That pair reported to police that they believe the shooter was Wortman. That was about 12 hours before RCMP sent out a Twitter alert asking the public to keep an eye out for him in a replica RCMP vehicle. The charred properties left little for investigators to comb through, so RCMP brought in a forensic anthropologist to help. The court documents also detail the 5 firearms police found in the vehicle the killer was driving when he was shot dead in Enfield. There were loaded rifles, and the gunman had Constable Heidi Stevenson's service pistol, which was missing 2 magazines. Police have said they've interviewed 500 witnesses about the rampage that killed 22 people. Elizabeth McMillan, CBC News, Halifax.
Well, how worried are you about getting on a plane again? After the break, new cleaning technology meant to give travelers some peace of mind.
It's not every day one gets a chance to fly around the crater of an active volcano. It's at the same time both exhilarating and terrifying. Since the eruption, the volcano has started rebuilding. The new dome, now the size of a stadium, sits in the center of a crater now 3 kilometers wide. Since the eruption 5 years ago, the mountain has become the subject of intense curiosity by scientists and tourists. But all the dollars they spend around here don't amount to much when you can see the immensity of the devastation and the problems it's still causing. Spirit Lake used to be a haven for fishermen and hikers. Harry Truman owned a lodge on the shore of the lake. He was 84 years old, and he wouldn't leave.
That's my life. Spirit Lake and Mount St. Helens is my life, folks. I've lived there 50 years. It's a part of me.
At 8:32 a.m. on Sunday, May 18, 1980, the volcano exploded. Harry Truman was killed along with 63 others. His body lies underneath tons of debris. The same debris that clogged the lake. The unstable dam threatened to break and flood the local area again. It took $27 million to bore a tunnel that gave the lake a new drain. And that's only the beginning of their problems. This couple keeps a 24-hour watch on the flow of the river, and the eruption could cause the snowpack to melt on the mountain, and a major flood could happen. In fact, the threat of flooding extends far down the rivers. In Kelso Longview, 60 kilometers away, is a constant subject of concern. Phil St. Jean knows his house could end up under 40 feet of mud if St. Helens erupts again.
There's a chance that if it went again, there may not be a Longview Kelso. And I spent a lot of years and a lot of time here, and I hate to see that happen.
The riverbeds have risen, forcing the communities along the rivers to raise the level of their dikes or install new ones. To go to the local courthouse, you now have to climb an extra set of stairs.
Most disasters are here today and over tomorrow, and you start to rebuild. Here we are almost 5 years down the road, and we're still trying to figure out how to deal with the biggest problem we've got, and that's trapping and holding an infinite source of sediment at its site.
A fifth of the shipping from the west coast of the United States moves along the Columbia River past this point. The sediment from Mount St. Helens clogs the shipping lanes, and dredging goes on all winter long. By itself, it has cost $250 million. In total, so far, Mount St. Helens has cost this area $600 million. And there's a proposal to spend another $300 million to build a special dam close to the volcano to hold back all the sediment.
I went up there a little while ago, about a year ago, and it's sad. It kind of brought a couple tears to my eyes because I did have such good times up there.
But it shouldn't lose hope. Vegetation is making a comeback, and so is wildlife. But the process of renewal is just barely started. Somehow, looking at this mountain, one feels that time here is simply not a concern. The scale of things here is just overwhelming. This giant will keep on rumbling, and maybe 100 years or so from now, there may be a new fishing lodge on Spirit Lake. Georges Tramel, CBC News, on Mount St. Helens.
Here are some of the stories we're following tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Just 2 more cases of COVID-19 confirmed in BC in the last 24 hours. That brings our total to nearly 2,450. Unfortunately, 3 more people have died, making 146 deaths in total.
So staying vigilant is even more important as we ease these restrictions and we start to interact again, both in our social interactions, but also in business.
As BC moves into phase 2 of its COVID-19 restart plan, a firm reminder from Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry for businesses: follow the new health and safety guidelines as you reopen. Starting today, restaurants, hair salons, and medically related services like dentistry and physiotherapy are just some sectors now allowed to operate under the new rules.
And many recreation centers and gyms also reopened today.
Greg Rasmussen hit the gym to find out what working out in a pandemic looks like.
It's back to the gym, but with conditions.
So you go straight to the bathroom, okay, if you can.
There's hand washing and equipment is cleaned before the workouts can begin.
Like 10 on one leg, and then you're gonna switch.
Clients have a set space, and the trainer keeps back too.
Like a lot of times people thought personal training was like we're touching no, you're not. Like, you don't have to.
The owner hopes the precautions will be enough.
A little bit of like nervousness still, but it's like more of an excited nervousness, I guess, because we've done what we can. You're like this, okay?
Many of his clients switch to online personal training, but prefer being at the gym.
For me, I think it's really important to stay physically active, and so being a part of this gym and this community is worth that risk.
Happy to be back and doing something physical and getting my mind off everything that's been going on.
For group activities, it's more complicated. Take spin classes, usually done in tight clusters. This Vancouver company was swamped with demand when it announced it was reopening, but it's had to relocate to a warehouse to accommodate physical distancing.
So we've introduced the comeback tour and we sold out within 5 minutes in Vancouver for the first week. And waitlist is through the roof.
Officials say transmission rates have gone down enough in BC for gyms and other businesses to reopen.
It's the new normal. We can do things, we can go back to doing things that we did before, but in a different way.
For business owners, different means fewer customers at one time and less profit. Despite restrictions being eased, many fitness centers in BC remain shuttered, including those run by local governments. But for enthusiasts, today's move is welcome.
To come back here and even just to see people, even if they're 6 feet away, it's just nice.
With hopes this test works. Greg Rasmussen, CBC News, Port Moody, BC.
Well, how worried are you about ever getting on a plane again?
It's a question being asked around the world as airlines and airports try to find ways to make travelers feel safe again.
As Susan Ormiston reports, there's hope new cleaning technology will help.
Open skies, but frightened flyers. The future of flying has to be radically different. Just look at DC's Reagan National on a weekday morning. More cleaners and staff than passengers. Airport restaurants dark. Aviation has taken a punch to the gut.
It's unlike anything we've ever seen. Our airports are empty. The revenue has almost completely stopped, and we don't know when it's coming back.
Wanlin Zong, an international student whose visa is running out, has to fly home today to China. If you didn't have to fly today, would you be getting on a plane?
Maybe no. I will stay at home and don't go out.
Flying now is almost lonely, but But try to imagine when, if millions of passengers have to go through security again.
With spatial distancing of about 2 meters between passengers, it takes about 350 meters just to accommodate the security screening line for one wide-body aircraft.
Get ready for more touchless travel. These kinds of kiosks might disappear or get a sanitized protective coating. In the future, your phone will be even more important. They'll use biometrics like facial recognition in many places from check-in to boarding. Airports and airlines are in a desperate race to come up with a kind of sanitation security. At Hong Kong Airport, spraying antimicrobial coating on all the places we frequently touch. Testing Clean Tech, a booth which checks your temperature and lightly sprays you with disinfectant. Cleaning now could go robotic, like at Pittsburgh, trying out scrubbers retrofitted with UVC light.
UV has been used in hospitals for decades as a way to disinfect and kill microorganisms. It's not enough with the pandemic that passengers see a clean airport, they need to know it's clean.
Airports might consider sanitation portals, like this one using far UVC light, experimental, meant to safely kill viruses on the body, not yet FDA approved. On the plane, prepare for flight attendants in masks or a version of full-body PPE. United Airlines will use electrostatic spray before every flight, and
we've actually tweaked the algorithm of the seat generator to maximize social distancing on the planes.
But that promise to space out passengers was called out after pictures emerged of packed flights. Looking ahead, how about a plastic shield separating you from your seatmate, developed by an Italian design company?
GlassSafe is a sort of a shield, plastic shield, to be given to the passengers, same as, let me say, your pillow or even the blanket, to be put on after takeoff.
So when you designed it, what were you trying to do?
Same as your mask, trying to limit the breath propagation.
It's portable, could be stored in a sanitized envelope under the seat. Longer term, Avio has designed a rear-facing middle seat for sanitation and privacy. For now, masks are mandated in Canadian airports and strongly urged on all aircraft. Some comfort for the Brewer family, traveling home, with David staying behind to work.
The risk is there, but you have to keep living life. We're going to have to live with this for a while.
And persuade more travelers that flying could be safe again. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Washington.
A strong cyclone is moving toward India and Bangladesh. How authorities are trying to help millions leave their homes while maintaining physical distancing. That's coming up.
And at 6:42, a live look at sunny downtown Vancouver tonight. We stayed dry here on the south coast, but that is about to change. Brett's going to tell us when the rain will return next.
Here's some fungal networks right here. Look at that. Wow. That's the big internet. So I started looking at below ground ecosystems and discovered that there's this internet of mycorrhizal fungi, which are fungi that are mutually beneficial to the trees and the fungi, and they actually can connect the trees together and serve as highways for movement of information and resources and water from tree to tree. We went on to map what this fungal highway or network looked like underground, and we found that the most highly connected trees were the biggest, oldest trees. We even went on to find out that they can recognize which seedlings are their own, their kin. So this led us to start calling them mother trees because of all the things that they do in the forest. And the idea of that is try to project, using this experiment, how retention of old trees will become more important as climate stresses our forests. And we're actually finding in our early results that in the seedlings that we've planted under the forest, that the more old trees that we retain in harsher climates, the better off the seedlings are doing. So this is an example of a clear cut. This is actually one of our experimental clear cuts. It's about 5 hectares in size, so it's a small one compared to what's done in operations, but this is typical. You know, as carbon gets stored in the soil from the tree into the fungi and the bacteria, and they decompose the forest floor, that carbon eventually moves deeper and deeper into the soil. Those are the carbon pools that are the most stable sinks for CO2. So it's really crucial in forestry that we learn how to protect that. If all that carbon in the soil also went into the atmosphere, climate change would speed up really, really fast. And so forest practices really need to strive to protect that. And what we think is that partial retaining these mother trees, partial retention of the trees on the forest actually helps keep it in there. You know, the engineers, for example, are trying to figure out ways how to capture carbon and store it below ground using all this fancy technology, but here these trees, they do it. Right? They've evolved for millions of years to do this through photosynthesis. It's the most ingenious, you know, highly specialized mechanism already. There's a recognition that clear cutting isn't, you know, the best thing everywhere. Foresters know this. So we have many industrial partners who are looking at alternatives. They want to know how to do a better job. You know, as climate change is really affecting more and more people, and we're recognizing that we've got to do something now, that I think that this is going to be adopted at a much faster rate in the very near future. It's coming, the time is now, and people are ready for it.
India and Bangladesh are bracing for a cyclone so powerful, officials are urging 500,000 people to head inland for shelter.
But as Chris Brown tells us, coronavirus is making evacuations a lot more complicated.
When the super typhoon hits, who knows if the sandbags and improvised seawalls will really make any difference to these low-lying villages. The storm surge could be over 5 meters high. From eastern India to the low, marshy areas of Bangladesh, authorities over a vast region urged more than 5 million people to seek shelter. Some of those shelters are being hastily converted from facilities that house patients with COVID-19.
It is cyclone in the time of COVID.
The head of India's Natural Disaster Response Force stressed a storm like this at a time like this is unprecedented. Having to choose between the virus or the storm, this woman says she feared the cyclone more. Authorities worry many others may not make the same calculation and stay in their homes, putting themselves at grave risk. Others have no place to go. Directly in the storm's path are refugee camps that house more than 1.3 Rohingya Muslims who were forced out of Myanmar. Canadian Dr. Fawzia Alvi has visited the region frequently as part of a Nobel-nominated humanitarian effort.
Those bamboo and tar tents, temporary dwellings, they're not going to hold those cyclone at all. There is no way it's going to worsen the already poor sanitation system. So it's going to worsen the spread of this coronavirus as well as other communicable diseases.
The region, of course, has frequently suffered catastrophic loss of life from huge storms. But this Canadian aid veteran says there's also been a big learning curve, which gives him hope this time.
The combination of national governments being better prepared and the aid agencies being better prepared, it saves more lives.
Still, Cyclone Amphan was ranked as the most powerful storm ever in the Bay of Bengal, though its winds have lessened slightly. Chris Brown, CBC News, Vancouver.
And meteorologist Brett Soderholm joins us now with our forecast, but you're also tracking that storm overseas as well, Brett.
Yeah, it's certainly a very powerful one, and landfall right now is looking about anywhere between 8 to 12 hours away. So there are a lot of people on high alert. And I did want to take the time just to show you the scale of this storm through a look at our satellite imagery right now, because it is still quite a large storm. That swirling mass of clouds that you can see there along the eastern coast of India, that is the storm in question. And right now, it would be the equivalent of a Category 3 hurricane. About 185 kilometers an hour would be its sustained wind. And it is steadily making its way to the north and approaching the capital of West Bengal. Now, at this point, we are expecting it to be making landfall sometime on Wednesday afternoon or evening local time, which will be very early in the morning for us over here. But of course, the concern with this is the catastrophic flooding that is likely to occur owing to this region being very low in elevation. It will eventually be dissipating by Thursday as it encounters the terrain. So something I will be following very closely. Back onto this side of the world, in terms of precipitation, fortunately, we are going to be seeing anything like that, but we are expecting a few scattered showers, as I mentioned a bit previously, throughout the day on Wednesday. Other places in BC are going to be remaining unsettled as well. In particular, this would be including the Kootenays. I would expect places like Cranbrook and Nelson to be getting anywhere between 5, 10, maybe even 15 millimeters of rain tomorrow, with the fact that we could be seeing a few embedded thunder showers. Farther to the north, places like Prince George and the Cariboo, and places farther to the north and east, like the Peace, are expecting a few showers as well, but it is not going to be nearly as heavy in those regions. All of this rain, though, as I try to bring a positive spin to all of this, is a positive story for our fire danger rating. We are looking at the return to a much lower rating right now, anywhere between low or very low for much of the southern half of BC. And not only is the rain helping with this, but the cooler temperatures as well play a really important part. Over the next couple of days, we're going to see fairly warm temperatures into the Okanagan on Wednesday, but by Thursday, the entire southern half of BC is going to be dropping off by a good solid 5 degrees. Now, in places like Vancouver, that's not going to be too far off of our normal, but for the days ahead, if we look at a 5-day forecast, it is going to be remaining fairly unsettled. We've been treated to a couple of pretty nice days with lots of sunshine, but as I said, we're going to be expecting a few showers throughout Wednesday and Thursday. Right now, even though it's a little bit far away, both Friday and Saturday are looking like to have a mix of sun and cloud, but I should expect a little bit more rain to end off this upcoming weekend as well.
Oh boy. All right, Brett, thank you.
Well, she regularly crosses the Canada-U.S. border, picking up and delivering the goods and products we need during the pandemic. This trucker also brought along her camera. Her video diary next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
The Indian Summer Festival marks its 10th anniversary by transforming itself into a season of online events. CBC Vancouver is a proud returning sponsor. On July 4th, join CBC Vancouver's Leanne Young for a special virtual cooking class with Vic from Vig. And don't miss special programming or contests. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/BC and keep connected with us.
Okay, one of the people crossing the Canada-U.S. border these days is an Ontario woman who works in the trucking industry.
She kept a video diary that shows what her job is like, and she shared it with our colleagues at CBC Windsor. Take a look.
My name is Holly Noble. I'm 28 years old. I live in Windsor, Ontario, and I am an AZ truck driver. By the end of the day, I will have crossed the bridge 4 times, been into Michigan twice. It's about a 12-hour day, give or take. I got my Lysol wipes, which I'm having a really hard time finding in stores. That's been a little hard. So I am pulling up to U.S. Customs right now, and I've got my gloves. I'm gonna go through Customs, take my stuff off, take out a wipe, wipe down my steering wheel again, because that's what makes me feel safe. Happy Friday. It's, what time is it? Almost 6 o'clock. I just crossed the Ambassador Bridge back into Windsor. Now I'm headed up to London, Ontario. I've been trying to avoid truck stops unless I have to refuel my truck, but sometimes I need to go in, but I'm prepared. I've got my mask on. I have my gloves right here beside me. I'm gonna put those on once I get what I need out of my wallet. And when I'm done, I'm gonna come out, take my things off before I touch anything in my truck, and I'm gonna sanitize my hands. And I'm gonna hit the road. I'll probably put on a true crime podcast, maybe listen to some music for my 2-hour trip to London, and just enjoy this nice day. I'm in London. I'm at my second stop today. Now I'm headed back to Romulus, where I will be dropping my trailer in a dock. And then I get to bobtail home, so I'm pretty excited. Usually during the week, it's nice to have those service stations because you can go in there and you can lounge around and you could take a break there instead of sitting in your truck all day. It gets a little stuffy, it gets a little, I don't know, your back hurts a little bit after a while. I have to say it's really surreal driving down the highway and seeing signs saying prevent COVID-19, stay home. You know, it's also been really hard not being able to see my family. I'm very family oriented and I haven't seen them in months. You know, I'm alone a lot and I'm okay with that. But not being able to see the people I love has really taken a toll on my mental health. Overall, successful week. I was safe. I feel confident that I'm going to keep my family safe as well because of all the precautions that I've been taking. And I'm ready to go home, get some well-needed rest, and, you know, start back at it on Monday.
Nice to see what happens. There are a lot of people across Canada crossing the border every day. Numbers are obviously down quite a bit, but there are many essential workers who have to go across.
Yes, and we appreciate what they do for certain. And of course, with the extension of the cross-border travel, now continuing till June 21st, she'll be doing that same good work along with, as you say, a lot of other people as well.
I guess the perk is no lineups at all, ever.
Exactly.
That's it for our program tonight. You can always find it online, cbc.ca/BC. And Dan is here at 11 o'clock after the National. But before you go...
What do you got? What do you got?
Well, I was going to let you introduce these.
Yes, look at this. We are going to leave you tonight with another look at 3 owlets, baby great horned owls. These are up in the Okanagan. This was their final day in the nest, and they were getting a little feisty.
One deciding to climb on top of the other. And by the afternoon, they had climbed out of the nest, out onto the branches of the tree, a sure sign they were soon heading into the skies. I just love how fluffy they are.
I think he's going to climb. He's climbing.
It's coming.
I think he just passed out. Great stuff. Thanks for watching tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow.